In the world today, there are four different parenting styles and two variables that distinguish each one from the other. The two variables are the level of demandingness, or what the parent expects of the child, and the level of responsiveness, the amount of interaction or the effort being put in by the parents for each task that or the child makes or based on the child's behavior. The four types are authoritative, which has high demandingness and high responsiveness. There's a lot of interaction with between the parent and the child, and they are very they are strict, but they are very much like big requirements, but followed by more rewards. And then there's authoritarian, which is high demandingness and low responsiveness. It's more my word is law, you have to do this because I said so. And even when they do the tasks, they're not really met with positive reinforcement. It's more of the more responsiveness is where they don't complete tasks or they misbehave, and it's very negative. Then there's permissive, which is low demandingness and high response. Basically, it's the kid gets whatever they want. It's the spoiled kid. Parent doesn't really know how to discipline their kid. And then there's neglectful, which is low demandingness and no response. There's not very much involvement with the parent. There's not very much that they care about. They really just anything goes, but they're not really involved. Now, the two parenting styles that I'm going to focus on because there is a style that is most effective is authoritative. Authoritative is the most effective style for three different reasons. One is there is a better dynamic between the parent and the child than any other parenting style. Now, this is due to the fact that they're very communicative in their discipline and very warm and nurturing, and they take situations with a grain of salt by, instead of an authoritarian's case, instead of verbally criticizing and demeaning their children for the actions that they made. Instead, authoritative parents take the approach of communicating to their child and explaining to them their fault or wrongdoing so that they can learn from their mistakes, and in communicating that, it builds a level of trust and a level of respect between the parent and the kid. And that's what the big positive is for there. Another is there are less psychological issues that are caused by authoritative than there are any other style of parenting. This is due to the fact that children raised in this method grow to be more independent and think for themselves while maintaining the strength of their relationship with their parent. Authoritarian has strict rules and regulations that the children have to follow because their parents' word is basically law. And should they not follow those rules, then they are going to be met with very harsh and sometimes questionable consequences. Most cases are verbal, some become physical, but in most cases it's very harsh with their punishments for not following the parent's instruction. Because authoritarian, their parents expect their kid to do what they say 100% of the time. And nobody's perfect. So that's where the extremity of the reaction comes from, is through the parents' expectations not being met 100% of the time. With authoritative, they are more lenient and more understanding. They're still strict and there are still consequences, but they understand why the kid made the decision they made, and they use that leverage to explain to the kid in a way they can understand it why what they did was wrong and what they can do to fix it. And that's where where there are less psychological issues, because in authoritarian kids are doing all of these things for their parents and they're trying to get some positive reinforcement out of them, and they're just not. And so the anxiety, there are issues that come up with anxiety because they are so scared. They are so scared of failing that it drives them to succeed. And being in a constant state of fear, anxiety. And depression is another issue with that, because they grow up knowing that in whatever they do, they're never gonna be as good as their parent wants them to be, because their parents always going to criticize them for something they did wrong. Whereas authoritative, the children grow up to be very independent, very strong-willed, very uh, sociable people, very well-rounded individuals. Whereas authoritarian, although children are very much successful and very much good at following rules and directions and very good at being hardworking, they're not as independent thinkers because they were never raised to think independently. Children in an authoritative have been grown to be have grown up to think for themselves and while being sociable, and whereas authoritarian, unfortunately, they are being restricted in their ability to grow as a human being through their parents' method of establishing a rule set where they have to follow everything their parent says, which establishes a level of dependency. And in conclusion, authoritative is the most effective and best style of parenting because it establishes a better dynamic between the parent and the child. It causes the least amount of psychological issues, and it helps the child develop into an independent, well-rounded human being who is easily sociable and can think for themselves.